Welcome to another program. Um, I wanted to talk today with somebody who knows a lot about how things are done when they're done well, when we're not at war, and that is U.S. Ambassador David Friedman. David Friedman was President Trump's ambassador to Israel for 4 years, and he's the author of an important book about his time in Israel called Sledgehammer: how breaking with the past brought peace to the Middle East. And it's true that when President Trump left office in January of 2021, the Middle East was had just ushered in a new era of Arab-Israeli peace with the Abraham Accords, and it seemed like Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and other Arab or Muslim majority countries were just biting at the bit, chomping at the bit to get on board as well. And then everything just sort of took a 180-degree turn. So I'm really happy to have Ambassador David Friedman on the show for your second time, I think. So welcome back to the Carolyn Glick Show, Ambassador.
Thanks, Carolyn. Happy to be with you again.
All right. Well, I actually want to start not with the Middle East. I want to start with the United States because that's where you are right now. And you really are... I'm following you on Twitter, and we're in many ways of like mind about what we're seeing now, which is a spasm, an unprecedented spasm, or expression of massive hatred towards Jewish people, towards the Jewish people, towards the state of Israel, the likes of which we never really saw before. And I'm just wondering, first of all, are you surprised by the ferocity of of this gusher of hatred that's just sort of exploding in cities across the United States these days?
So, I'm surprised in one sense, in the other sense, I'm not. And surprised, of course, I've never seen it before in my lifetime. So, of course, it's certainly off-putting and concerning. At the same time, if you were watching and paying attention a couple of summers ago when, cities across America were basically being burned down, Portland, Oregon, and other West Coast cities in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, and you saw the energy behind what became the Black Lives Matter movement and the defund the police movement, and all these kind of rogue organizations that were trying to destroy all the institutions that made America a great country, and then you saw kind of the intersectionality, movement of like, we're all fighting the same, white colonialist oppression, and it wasn't a long leap to get from there to Israel is a white colonialist oppressor, right? So, if I was a little bit smarter, I probably should have been able to predict all of this because, in hindsight, it's all completely understandable. This is a movement of people under 30. I mean, I don't know anybody, middle-aged or older who feels that way about Jewish people. I mean, I'm not seeing it anywhere except among very young people, poorly informed. We're paying obviously for the sins of academia across the United States, but it's this just general, premise that began a couple of years ago that white people are bad people, they're colonializers, and they oppress people of color, and Israel fits right in, even though, as you and I know well, Israel is not a white country. Israel has lots of black and brown people and never considered itself to be, a colonializer. Just the opposite. It opposed the Brits and the Turks, who were the colonial powers. But logic has gone out the window and truth has gone out the window, and we're left with this kind of just horrible assemblage of poorly informed young people who are, I think, and I'll kind of end it here. I think they're digging their own grave because I do think they are deeply unpopular with the rest of society. They're blocking traffic. They're obnoxious. They're offensive. They're, getting in the way of people's commutes to work and their commutes home. And I just think that they are deeply unpopular among the rest of society. And I do think this will run a course where they will be, as they say, in the dustbin of history at some point in the near future.
But it seems to have captivated um, maybe even the majority of Americans between the ages of 18 and 24. I mean, you had this Harvard Harris poll that came out that's making reasonably a lot of waves here in Israel, and I would assume in the United States, where people were asked in-depth questions about various forms of anti-Semitism and how they feel about Israel, among many other things. And this is the sort of thing I don't think we've ever seen in American society before. When you look at these young people, and as they get older, the prevalence of anti-Semitism, of this kind of sort of Nazi-like Jew hatred, sort of diminishes, but it's still among the 30 to 45 age group rather high, higher than the older Americans are. But this seems to be an expression of American youth today and young adults, and these people are going to be taking over the country soon. So how do you look at these numbers?
Look, they're very disturbing. I mean, I could be completely off on this, but I'm just old enough to remember, the 1960s, and the counterculture of the 1960s. It wasn't anti-Semitic at all, just the opposite. Israel was celebrated after the Six-Day War. But, it was a movement that sought to break down, most of the institutions that other people held sacred. I was a kid. I wasn't part of it. I was only about, I was 10 years old in 1968. But I had an older brother and sister who were, at Columbia University, so deeply involved in those days and the counterculture. And, over time, a lot of those people became incredibly conservative over time. I mean, so there is some wishful thinking that there is wisdom that comes with age, but you may be right. This may be an irreversible trend, and if it is, I think that I have not heard a really sound basis to end it. You can obviously. If we were back in office right now, I know what we'd be doing, because we'd be having this conversation in the Oval Office, and we would be cutting off all funding to all academic institutions that are that aren't controlling anti-Semitism. And if we're up to me, and I haven't spoken to President Trump about this, but I would bet that he would take all the government funding, of which is in the many, many billions of dollars, to academic institutions, and just take it away from all social studies. Take it away from all the soft. We don't need to fund people to do academic research on on all kinds of silly social issues. I would spend money on engineers and on hard science, and I think it's important both politically and important to compete with China. And I think that's I wouldn't be surprised if that were our approach. But right now we are. The politics of the Democratic Party is to, they're deeply embedded in young academics and kids, because kids are overwhelmingly vote Democratic. Although you probably saw what I saw today in the New York Times. I still read it just so I can know what dumb things people are saying. But oddly enough, what's happened is it looks to me, reading it the way I'm reading it, the New York Times is actually doing Trump a huge favor, because they are so critical of Biden's handling of the war in Israel, so sympathetic to the intersectional left, that those people are oddly enough, the youth actually prefer Trump over Biden in this latest poll. Under 30 voters prefer Trump to Biden. So, the New York Times has sort of reaped what it sowed. It's done exactly, what, this is what happens when you kind of coddle and indulge, the people on the far left. They will turn on you. They're not reliable. They will turn on you. And this is what I think is happening, oddly enough, in American politics right now.
Well, that is an interesting. I hadn't planned on going in that direction, but but let's go here for just a second, because when you look at all of these petitions, protests that have been signed and that have been joined by members of the Biden administration against Biden's handling of the war, because he's too pro-Israel, from people across his administration. It started in the State Department, and now and it's moved from the State Department and included the White House, the Defense Department, the Department of Justice. They are in key positions in the Democratic Party, in the federal government, in the media, and they're the ones who graduated from Harvard and Columbia and Yale and Stanford, et cetera. So, I mean, when you look at the way they've been seated in all of these places, you think that these institutions are just going to die? That people are just going to look at the New York Times as just know thy enemy and not read it for information anymore? I mean, how are these institutions going to outlast these people? They've been penetrated.
I mean, there's an awfully large amount of irony here, because, when I was ambassador, I was always criticized by people in the Democratic Party that, Trump's base included people that, were not pro-Israel, were anti-Semitic. And I said, if it is, I mean, I'm not aware of it, and it's certainly tiny. And the same people would say, Netanyahu's government, has embraced people on the far right, and how could he do that? And my response was always, guys, you got people, and it's a much, much, much larger portion of your constituency. You got people on the left, far left, and they're not your people either. And I'm going to bet that when they start becoming more and more vocal, you're going to disagree with them, and it's going to be much more of a problem for you. Don't tell me that we've embraced the right. You've embraced the left, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a bigger problem for you. They said, no. These are good people. These are people who are well educated. These are people who want to do the right thing. These are people of good faith. And wow, have they miscalculated that? Because Biden right now is facing a huge revolt. From the left. I mean, we never had that problem. We never had, we were never being pushed around by people on the far right when we were in government. We barely gave them the time of day, and we renounced everybody who was who had a whiff of anti-Semitism. And here you got this group of tens of millions of people who are core Democratic voters who are rejecting the Democratic Party because they support Israel, and they are reaping what they sow. They encourage these people. They embrace these people, and now they got to live with these people. And I don't think it's going to be a relationship that's going to last. Now, what happens? 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't know. I mean, the only area where I think we can make a difference is twofold. Number one, we have to restore the deterrent power of the police, the local police all around the United States. I mean, there's no consequence to blocking traffic. You sit on a road, you block 20,000 people, you block ambulances, you block people who are trying to get their wives to the hospital to give birth. I mean, they are angering a lot of people right now, and I think the police need to be reengaged and haul them off and put them in jail, and not just put them in jail overnight, but to have real consequences, because these are all cowards, right? When they know they're gonna sit in jail for a week with some people that don't agree with them. I mean, they're going to think twice. The second thing is, especially the ones who are in college, they didn't go to college to protest Israel. They went to college to go out and get jobs. And the more that the job market rejects this philosophy, and, there are a lot of good organizations right now that are taking videos of all these idiots who are ripping down posters. They find out their names. They're able to, to work the Google algorithm so that if you Google their name, this is the first thing you see. As long as there are consequences to bad behavior, I think the bad behavior will abate. These are not principled people. These are not informed people. These are not really ideological people. These are people who I think to some extent are paid for. I think, George Soros and his crowd, are basically renting shelf space on Black Lives Matter and defund the police. And I think that, once they understand that this is not getting them to a good spot, I think it can be abated, because again, I don't think it's ideological. As you follow up on these polls and you ask these kids, you guys realize that when you say Palestine from the river to the sea, you're calling for the destruction of Israel? I think 2/3 of them said, well, that's not what we meant. I'm not saying we ought to embrace these people, but a lot of them are not as bad as they sound, because at the end of the day, they don't have the courage of their convictions, and their convictions are paper thin because they don't really understand the issues.
Yeah, I guess so. But this brings us, to what you were saying about your conversations with your counterparts on the left or in the Democratic Party. And the thing is that this really brings us to the Jewish communal leadership in the United States, or unless that's sort of an oxymoron, unfortunately, you and I and others like us were warning about the Green-Red Alliance on campuses, the anti-Semitism on campuses that's really been growing and became a danger, 10, 15 years ago, not on October 7th. I mean, what happened on October 7th, what's happened since October 7th is a natural progression from what we saw on October 6th. So, people like you and I and others, were warning for years about this. People wrote books. They produced not documentary movies about this, and nobody was listening, and everybody was dismissing them. The ADL didn't want to hear about Islamic anti-Semitism and was poo-pooing left-wing anti-Semitism and insisting that the most dangerous form of anti-Semitism was from the right. And now, they've been mugged by reality, I guess. How do you assess their response? How do you see the Jewish leadership in the United States, the ADL, the federations? If you were supposed to give them grades, I'm asking you, would you grade them? Let me know what you think. What should they be doing that they're not doing, and what are they doing that has surprised you for the better, or whatever, however you want to answer it? How do you assess it?
Well, obviously, the results are in, and they failed. I mean, we were shouting about anti-Semitism on the left, and by no means is that a suggestion that there's not anti-Semitism on the right, or that it's not a significant issue. It is, but there is a
tree of life.
Yeah,
we saw it.
But there's a difference. The difference is that anti-Semites on the right are much easier to spot. They're horrible people. They're neo-Nazis. They're ugly. You can figure out who they are. You can spot who they are, and I believe that they are rejected by 90+% of American society. I mean, they're not given a quarter, in any civilized society. You walk into a cocktail party in Manhattan, and you're wearing a swastika, they're going to throw you out. Okay, properly so. But if you walk into a cocktail party in Manhattan and you talk about the fact that net, Israel was really a bad idea and it shouldn't exist and it was a failed experiment, some guy with holding a drink says, "Well, tell me more about that, and let's discuss that." And it becomes, appropriate for civilized conversation. And you can talk about that in universities, and it becomes kind of a political movement. And it's about freedom fighters, and it's about, the oppressed versus the oppressor. And it's all anti-Semitism, but it's cloaked in this, veneer of respectability that enables it to grow and to flourish. And we were seeing that for years, and that's the danger. Now, the problem with these organizations is that they didn't see it, and they were willing, because they had a lot of money coming from the left. They were willing to kind of consider it an academic discussion, a free speech issue, and one which could be kind of dealt with, not as a challenge of anti-Semitism, but just, we can kind of educate our way through this. And you can't. You have to call this out as anti-Semitism, just on the left, the same as on the right. And so that just crept up on institutional Jewish leadership over the last 5 years. Now, I think the question is the horse out of the barn? I mean, can it ever be brought back? I don't know. I mean, they're trying. I mean, they've certainly changed their approach. I mean, a lot more people now are willing to say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. But it's, I don't know if it's too late or not. I mean, look at the, I thought the most interesting thing was about a year ago when when Biden came out with his report on anti-Semitism, right? And,
who came out with it?
Biden, the U.S.
Okay.
They had their and everyone, everyone on the center, not just the left, but the center, most Jewish organizations, they heralded this report. It was the most comprehensive attempt to tackle anti-Semitism ever, right? Now, they tackled all the anti-Semitism on the right. Again, no complaints about that. But, they did not adopt the IHRA definition, right? Which, everybody was trying to push them to do. They mentioned it, but they refused to adopt it. And they never really talked about anti-Semitism on college campuses and the attempts to vilify Israel. And so I was like, the only guy in America getting up and saying, I don't think this is such a great report, because I think the most significant form of anti-Semitism that exists in this country today is totally ignored by this so-called comprehensive attempt to tackle anti-Semitism. But most Jewish leaders thought this was great. They thought that, they participated in it. Now, by the way, who also participated in this? CARE. CARE. CARE, one of the most anti-Semitic organizations in America. I don't think
whose leader actually praised October 7th as a glorious moment or some such. You have, this is a Hamas front organization, according to the Holy Land Trust for Palestine terror financing trial from 2007. They had CARE on as an unindicted co-conspirator with the Holy Land Foundation, and many of the leaders of the Holy Land Foundation took on roles in other Muslim organizations in the United States, like Students for Justice in Palestine, that are running these pro-genocide riots throughout campuses and throughout the United States today. So yeah, it's a disaster.
All the centrist, Democrat, leftist kind of anti-Semitic fighters, those who were kind of empowered with the job of fighting anti-Semitism, they missed this completely. They gave this a complete pass. College campuses, anti-Zionism, they gave it a complete pass. And now we're seeing that is the most insidious, the most dangerous form of anti-Semitism in this country.
Yeah, we were right. So what do you think? Are they going to be able to fix it? It's a question that we ask here about, our military leadership that totally flunked on October 7th. Are they going to be able to win the war? Are the people, the American Jewish leaders who ignored and really belittled anybody who pointed out the dangers and tried to shut everybody up? I'm thinking of Charles Jacobs, for instance, from the David Project, who produced a movie, Columbia Unbecoming, in 2003 about anti-Semitism at Columbia.
Yeah.
And nobody ever wanted to talk about it, and nobody wanted to talk to him. And, I wonder, are these people going to be able to protect American Jewry?
Look, I think there's institutional Jewish leadership in America on this front has failed. Where they are good, is they, since October 7th, they've raised a lot of money. And I want to give them credit for that. They've raised a lot of money. The federations have raised an unprecedented amount of money. JNF has done great things in terms of raising money. So if organizations whose goal it is to reach out to Americans who love Israel, however they love Israel, and to explain to them Israel's in peril and to raise money, I think they've done an excellent job actually since October 7th. The advocacy side of it has been terrible, has been weak. But that is being replaced. I'm seeing every day some new group is kind of arising, trying to get funded to take a very different view. So I wouldn't rely on kind of the legacy Jewish advocacy groups. There are some good ones. I don't want to paint them all with the same brush, but I think that there are a lot of younger people in their 30s and 40s and even their 20s who really care about this and want to. And have the capacity to appeal to a younger crowd and to reach out. And I think they're working really hard at it. And so I don't want to write them off. The legacy, I'm not sure how relevant we are anyway. I'm 65. I don't know anybody who's 25 who cares what I say. And I'm not sure I'm going to change anybody's mind. But those who are, I think they're working hard, and I think we need to give them a chance.
Well, let's go to these 25 plus people who are committed to this fight. When you look, it was a perfect storm, both in the failure of the Jewish communal leadership in the United States, but also in terms of the assimilation levels, the intermarriage levels, the abandonment of the community on the part of many, many people, particularly the young. And, so all of a sudden you have this existential crisis, this existential assault on the community coming for people who are unaffiliated, seemingly out of nowhere from their own political camp. Shake them up, and make them more committed, less committed. How do you see, in the long term, do you think that the trends that we've been seeing, the sort of slow drive towards and then faster towards assimilation of the non-religious American Jews, the vast majority of them, do you think that that is going to be changed, that this trend is going to be reversed? Are people going to become more committed? Do you think that the community will become less committed? I mean, how do you see this sort of apocalypse in a way for the Jewish community that's happening now? How is that how do you see it bearing out in the months and the years to come? I mean, take it any way you want.
Look, I think the Jewish community will largely go the way of society in general, which is the middle will kind of get squeezed out. It'll look like a barbell. You're going to have. I think the Orthodox community in America is growing and strong, and I'm part of it, and I know it well, and I don't doubt the viability of the Orthodox Jewish community, the people that go to day schools and yeshivas, and I just think that's a growing community. People have 4, 5, 6 kids, and they all send them to day schools, and it's largely very Zionistic, and I'm just not seeing. I'm seeing growth there, and I think that you add that to the efforts of organizations like Chabad, which are able to reach out to people who are less affiliated, and I think in a very inclusive way, a very kind of joyous, optimistic way. So I wouldn't write any of that off. The other side of the barbell, I think, is kind of toast, right? Those are the ones who actually they consider their Jewishness to be simply a way to have greater credibility in liberal causes. So you have this organization called Not in Our Name, right? A bunch of Jews were protesting around the United States saying, "Don't fight Gaza in our name. We're Jews and we don't like this war at all. We think Israel should have a ceasefire on day one." So those Jews will eventually, I think, just kind of they will remain perhaps as a political movement, but a political Jewish movement is doesn't. I don't think it's going to have enough energy to continue. So look at Europe, right? Look at England, right? England is fast becoming unaffiliated Jews and Orthodox Jews, right? You have Golders Green and places like that in London and Manchester, and then you have pretty much not much affiliation. Same in you have that in Belgium and in Antwerp. You have it in Australia, in Melbourne. That's sort of the trend. I mean, the only place, and I think the trend is going to continue. I think the only place where you can be Jewish, have lead a full, complete Jewish life without being observant is Israel. I think if you really want to be observant, you can probably lead that life elsewhere. But if you want to be Jewish and associate as being a Jew, but you're not really prepared to kind of take upon yourself all the commandments, at least not right away, the only way to lead a full, complete Jewish life, I think, is going to be in Israel. And I think that's going to continue. That trend will continue. I think Aliyah is going to grow.
Well, that would be great. And now I just want to swerve to your role as the ambassador here and talk about what we're seeing here with the war. So your former boss, Donald Trump, has said repeatedly since October 7th that had he been reelected, were he today president, then October 7th would never have happened. Do you agree with it?
I do, and I'll tell you why. We had a few of these skirmishes when I was in office. And immediately, we put out a message. I almost always it was coming from me, that says that not only does Israel have the right to defend itself, it has the obligation to its citizens to defend them, and that it should use whatever means it deems necessary to end the war or to end the battle as quickly and decisively as possible. We never said anything about, obviously we didn't talk about things like settlements, but we also never talked about, civilian casualties, meaning we let it be known to everyone that there are no handcuffs on Israel. The gloves are off, and they should just, and I think that messaging kept Hezbollah from attacking, because look, in the case of Hezbollah, they I think they came to view themselves as having a deterrent capacity against Israel, but they were like a one-trick pony. They could attack once, and probably with devastating consequences, but then they'd be gone because there would be no limitations at all on Israel fighting back with the most, as people have said, to flatten Beirut and bring it back to the Stone Age. That was our view, and we made that clear. So again, I can't, we can't prove a negative, but I think at least, if Hamas would have attacked, they would have done so recognizing the fact that they could not then hide behind civilians and push for a ceasefire, right? Because that was their strategy. The strategy was to inflict as much damage. Okay, we don't care about the people in Gaza that much, but let's we'll take some incoming, and then we'll start the dead baby campaign. We'll start showing pictures of dead babies and dead women all around the world, even if those dead babies were killed in Mosul, 6 or 7 years ago. We just take the pictures, or right, we'll just start flooding the media with pictures, and we'll sue for a ceasefire, and we'll get it because eventually, the Democratic Party will tell Israel enough. And unfortunately, America has a lot of leverage over Israel right now. I mean, it's more than they should. More than they should. I mean, these are allies that should deal with each other in ways that where nobody threatens anybody. But Israel's low on ammo. And America can make it a lot faster. America has more Iron Dome, manufacturing capacity. America's got a lot of money that hopefully will find its way to Israel one day. America has the aircraft carriers. Israel doesn't have any aircraft carriers. America's they got 2 of them in the Eastern Mediterranean. America has I used to attend these sessions. In those days it was called Juniper Cobra. Now there's even a second round of training exercises where they simulate missile attacks from Hezbollah and America joining Israel in missile defense. So America, has a significant commitment to Israel in terms of helping them with their missile defense against Hezbollah and Iran. So, if America says, don't do this, or we're not in, or we're going to start pulling back, from a military perspective, not from a policy perspective, from a military perspective, Israel, unfortunately, has to take that into account. And so, and I have no doubt that they have. I have no doubt that at this point, as Biden sees the political consequences of siding with Israel, I think they're trying to put significant handcuffs on Israel, and it's going to lead the two countries to I think some kind of an impasse, because I believe there's no politician in Israel who can end this war short of the real defeat of Hamas, whatever that means. I mean, being able to look people in the eye, who left Be'eri or one of the kibbutzim down in the south, look them in the eye and say, go back home, you're completely safe, right? I mean, that's, I think, really the litmus test. Israel's far away right now from being able to say that. And if they can't say that, I don't think any politician, right now, leaving aside all the likely outcomes of all this politically, but I think no politician can make that deal with America, no matter how much pressure America puts on Israel.
See, the thing is that, it's not just Be'eri, it's not just the communities in the Negev, it's also in the north. And the United States right now is making it very clear in every way that those aircraft carriers may be there to protect Israel, but they're also there to protect Hezbollah. That the United States is, we have this express train of senior officials from the Biden administration that arrive here almost on a daily basis to hector us. They come in, they sit at the war cabinet, which I guess you can't really call a war cabinet anymore because it's really just this VIP hospitality service for visiting secretaries of state and national security advisors and defense secretaries. And, they sit there and they tell us, well, you have to limit your operations here. We're going to put together a task force of international actors to escort ships to prevent the interdiction of ships by the Houthis. But nobody's talking about attacking Yemen. I mean, nobody's talking about attacking the Iranian command ship that I understand is sitting there and overseeing all of the operations that the Houthis are carrying out. Nobody's bombing them. No, everything is about not taking any offensive actions. You're going to defend merchant vehicles coming through the Bab el Mandab and traveling up to the Suez Canal or up to the port of Eilat. I mean, like, that's your job. But what about the Houthis? I mean, why should they get away with this? And it's because the same reason as in Lebanon. Hezbollah can manifest an existential threat to the state of Israel and make it impossible as a practical matter for 100,000 Israelis to live in any sort of modicum of security in their homes. And yet the Biden administration is saying, no, this is a diplomatic problem. Let's find a deal. Let's make a deal. I mean, what would you tell Israel to do under these circumstances? We need them, but
Yeah, look, I think and you asked me earlier about President Trump. Look, the one thing that overrides all of this, the one thing that kind of sits on top of all these issues, is the fact that Iran was bankrupt in 2020, and its lead sponsor of terrorism had been assassinated, and there were no consequences to America from doing that. And now Iran is a wealthy nation. We're talking about a $14 billion aid package for Israel, but just in the last 6 months, the United States has released $16 billion. First, $6 billion for 5 hostages, and then another 10 in sanctions. That's $16 billion for Iran. So we're continuing to do this insanity of funding both sides of the war. Why? Because after Afghanistan and after Russia, okay, the Democratic Party cannot handle in an election year another major war. They just can't handle it. And so they're doing everything they can to avoid hostilities there. Now, you're right. How do you tell 100,000 people in the north to go back home again? I mean, how do you tell people in Kiryat Shmona or Malot that it's safe to go back home? You can't. And the Israelis say, well, look, find us a diplomatic solution, or we'll find our own solution. I think that's the right message. Will they really do it? I don't know. I don't know if there's really teeth behind that messaging. But I do think that's what Israel has to do. I think they can say, look, if you can create a buffer zone and you can make us comfortable that that people can go home, end this nonsense, I guess we'll look at it and see if it makes sense. But this war's not over if 100,000 Israelis can't go back home in the north. It's not. And I don't think any Israeli political leader can look the Israeli public in the eye and say, we won the war, without solving the problem in the north as well.
So that's really the question. I mean, like when you go, it's sort of sick because it's the life of this country on the line. But when you look at how the Biden administration is treating or mistreating Israel, politics plays such a role in it. Question is, where's the other side of this equation? Where are the Republicans? Because you have, the data show that around a quarter of Democrats are hardcore supporters of Hamas. You have another 17%. This was, again, in the same Harvard-Harris poll that I was citing about the anti-Semitism of young Americans. They have 17% of Democrats side more with Israel than with Hamas. 25% of Democrats side more with Hamas than with Israel. And then you have the middle, about 48% of Democrats who side more with, who side equally with both sides. So, you can't win the election if you, and not to mention independents that Biden also needs to get elected. So why don't we hear from the Republicans? Why doesn't this become an election issue from the right for Biden? We're not hearing really anything. Trump says every once in a while, well, it would never have happened if I were there. But there's no kind of, what are you doing, Biden? You can't do this. And then if he's afraid of losing the Hamas voters, then shouldn't be afraid of losing an even larger constituency of voters who side with Israel?
Look, first of all, I think, the Republican Party is overwhelmingly supportive of Israel in this war. And, I'm on the phone regularly with all the major Republican senators who are active in foreign policy. Every one of them believes that Israel has to do whatever it takes to defeat Hamas. I haven't sensed any softness there at all. Look, how Donald Trump runs his campaign is his view. I think that right now if you're an American voter, let's just let's just, you and I care deeply about this issue, but let's also, recognize the reality of America, right? Which is that the vast majority of Americans aren't even paying attention to this. And that's with the incredible, Israel's getting a huge amount of attention in the press right now. But even with that, let's not kid ourselves to think that this is, for a lot of Americans, their number one issue. What's the number one issue? They can't buy a house. Right? Mortgage rates are at 7.5%. They've been at 3% for like all these years. Okay, so you got all this massive inflation that's causing people to lose money. The economy has always been the number one issue in American politics for as long as I've been following it. The second thing is that there's a high probability, God forbid, that America will suffer a terrorist attack on its own soil, because we have all these tens of thousands of people coming in illegally that nobody's vetting. Okay, those are the issues that animate American domestic politics right now. If you bring up Israel, you'll get a lot of people that will support it, but I think it's important for Israel to recognize, because sometimes they think, America loves us. I love you, and a lot of people do, but it's not. You need to live in the real world and understand that just like Israelis don't vote on the basis of, an open board, like America's at risk for a terrorist attack on its own shores. Is anybody in Israel going to vote for their leaders on that basis? No, of course not. So politics is, essentially local. It's always been local. And so I think that, we raise the issue within the American political system. We get great results out of the Republicans. I think Trump, I've spoken to him several times about this privately. I have no doubt where he stands on this issue. I think he would support, Israel winning the war as quickly and decisively as possible, so this never happens again. I don't doubt that for a second. But I also know that if you're running for office in America right now, national office, you're running on the economy and you're running on the border. Those are the issues that really, I think, resonate.
I guess I totally understand what you're saying. Obviously, America is essentially under invasion that's being facilitated by the administration that refuses to enforce the immigration laws at the border. But what I'm asking is something different. We live in the present tense. We have to get through today. We have to get through tomorrow. We're going to get, God forbid, but every morning we wake up with the casualties, with who died, who was killed yesterday in Gaza. We are in a war, and the entire country is mobilized for this war. We have 300,000 people who are in reserves and at war as we speak. As I'm speaking to you, Pete, there are battles going on, hard battles in Gaza, and the question is, every day we're being hectored by Biden and his top officials. We're being bullied by them. They're putting pressure on Israel to take action that undermines our men on the ground. And the question is, so are we just stuck? Like, we just have to deal with them? Or can, there be counter pressures in the United States from Republicans that, bring them in for hearings, about where this humanitarian aid is going to. How can they guarantee that the United States isn't supporting Hamas in this war through their humanitarian aid? Can't there be action on the ground by Republicans who do care about Israel along with the border and the economy, etc., that will make this more difficult politically for the Biden administration to continue to pursue? That, I guess, that's the crux of the issue. Is there something that can be done now? Because who knows where we're going to be in November?
Look, I think there are, I don't know, 7 or 8 really good Republican senators who who've taken ownership of this issue, and they've done a lot politically to help. But it's, their words. They maybe influence the town square, the political discourse. When I was in office, the one thing that struck me about being in office, one thing I learned, is the extraordinary power of the president when it comes to foreign policy. It is really amazing, because look, we were doing all these things that were very much against the will of the Democrats in Congress, right? Whether it was the embassy, whether it was go on hikes, whether it was, recognizing the rights of the Jewish people to live in Yudav Shomron. I mean, we were doing all kinds of things, and you know what? They couldn't stop us, and they weren't happy about it, but they couldn't stop us because that's the power of the presidency. The Supreme Court has made it very clear when it comes to foreign policy, the president has almost complete authority. He picks the Secretary of State, and he controls all these decisions. So, I mean, the short answer is, I think we gotta manage. We got to manage until January 20th, a year from this January 20th. We got to manage. By the way, it's not November because some of the worst things, as you know, happen after the election and before there's a turnover, as we saw with the Obama administration. We got to hang in there. We got to find ways to manage. We got to get, we got to do as much as we can to keep the balls in the air and to put pressure on Biden not to handcuff Israel. But it's going to be, I would say fasten your seatbelt for the next 12 months. We got to kind of hang in there and do what we can. And I hope we get a Republican president in. I hope we get Trump in. I mean, I hope we get, because I think things will change. Look at it like this. How quickly did the world go south, when Biden came in, right? It was like, it's unbelievable that somebody could ruin so many things and do so much damage, to such a great country so quickly. Just like, Biden did so much damage that quickly. That's how quickly we can reverse these things and do good things. But we got to win an election. We really do. And I don't want to scare everybody, but we have to win this election and get the right people back in making American foreign policy. And until then, we got to just kind of do the best we can.
Okay. Well, I guess on that note, we should probably end the conversation today. I guess I could ask you what you think of Trump these days. I mean, you think he's going to win? You think what do you think? You think he would run? He would run the government the way that he did last time? I mean, think it would be better?
Look, we haven't had those kind of detailed conversations. I focus when I'm talking with him. We're always talking about Israel. That's almost always what we talk about. He knows that's my primary interest as it relates to America, and I've only heard good things, and I'm optimistic. Look, if I think it's obvious. The numbers suggest he will win the primary. It also suggests he will win the general election, although it's far away. And assuming he does, we're going to get into a lot more granular. I hope he, he gives me the opportunity to get much more granular on a lot of these issues, and I spent 4 years with him with a lot of good things getting done, and I think I'm hoping that's the future as well.
Well, maybe that's where we should end it, because the truth is, David, I think you were the most beloved ambassador here ever. There have been lots of ambassadors here, and everybody's always nice to them. But I remember seeing you and your wife in the shuk in Jerusalem in Machane Yehuda, and I mean, there's literally no ambassador that's ever come here, I don't think from any country, that has received the genuine adoration of just people on the streets of Israel that you did. And I have to add that it was well deserved, because people get it. They know who our friends are, and they know who are warm and great. I used to call you Uncle David, because you're like everybody's uncle. And I remember a number of people said, is he Carolyn Glick's uncle? Because I get on social media, I kept referring to you as Uncle David.
Well,
and in a way, I mean, that was just the sense that we all had. You were like our uncle from America.
Well, people, I think.
I hope you come back.
I think some people love me because they like the policies, but I think the other part, like it was reciprocated. I mean, I love the people of Israel. I'm incredibly impressed with them. I have such admiration for what they've achieved, and I just think they're living an ongoing miracle, and so. Maybe people felt that love, and that's why it was reciprocated as well.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of things, but I think it was definitely that we just love you and we want you back. So
yeah, thank you.
Let's get this done. All right. Well, I appreciate it very much, you coming on again, and we'll see you, I hope, again soon, because this has been a great conversation. And all of you guys, keep your eyes on this space. There'll be a lot more shows coming up very soon. Take care.
Bye, Carolyn.
Take care.
Thank you.